evening, everyone. I'm Nazeera, the host for Chai and Just Chat. This is our fourth year session. We've been going strong every month on different topics that matters to you and us and to the community. Thank you for joining us. We had to reschedule the session from yesterday because, as you all know, the Georgia storms happened. Most of us lost power. So I have to say thank you to all the panelists who are here, who have agreed to join us today on a Friday evening and based on the importance of the topic, the power of voting. So thank you again for joining us. You've already registered and you've sent some questions to us and we have incorporated that into our discussion as we move forward. Stephanie, who's joining us today, has to leave earlier, so I will have more questions for her as we progress. But definitely the core discussion will continue to happen. Let me introduce briefly all of the panelists here, and we'll have the general questions before we get into the core voting questions. So Shri Gurusamy is joining us all the way from Chicago. Shri, thank you so much. And as I was looking into the emails, I realized we've been connected from almost 3 or 4 years ago, and I don't think I've ever responded to your email. So Shri, let me take the opportunity to tell you thank you so much for continuing to keep the connections and joining us this evening. Your voice, as you are the one of the board members for Indian Voice for Voting, is very important tonight. So thank you for joining us. And I always wondered why social workers always become activists. So you're one such testimonial, and thank you for again for taking the time with us today. Karthik Bhatt, who's joining us as well. Karthik, thank you. And you are like this, as they say, the black horse just came out from nowhere and started, striking, which is good in the political process.
Thank you so much.
Yes, it takes courage for what you do. So thank you, Karthik. We would love to hear further from you. I know you are also a realtor manager, a property manager as well.
Yes.
On your professional life. But
Yes.
we see you very much in the political process arena as well.
Yes.
So thank you for
Yes,
joining
thank
us,
you.
Karthik. We have Simran. Simran, probably you are not the youngest, so much. Might be you're younger. Might be you are one of the youngest stars, but definitely not younger than me. Yeah. Okay, there you go. So, Simran, thank you all the way for joining us from probably UGA second year student. You're doing a lot. And Simran, again, I can't appreciate when youth and millennials get involved in the political process. And Simran, you're also the UGA president for your Doctors Without Borders. So thank you, and we wish you continuing success and all the good that exists there. Yeah, thank you so much. Diane, thank you so much for joining us. Diane, as we know you, you are a former councilwoman, and your voice today is really very important. I hope you can hear us, Diane. All you have to do is unmute when you want to speak. So Diane is a former council member, and she's also a community activist and an advocate, and she is also on the board members of several political organizations or organizations that advocate for the political system or the process. So thank you for joining us today, Diane. We have Fred. Fred, you have joined the millions of proud voters in US, and it probably took you 21 years to get there, but they say it's not the destination, it's the journey. So we would love to hear your journey until you got your first vote. So congratulations on that first vote. And as they say, every vote counts. So you did really make a count this time. So thank you, Fred. Apart from being the first voter, you're also on the board member for animal rescue organizations. That is one of your passion. And you're also a corporate executive. So thank you for joining us today, Fred. And Rizwan ji, thank you again for joining. Rizwan is the founder and the director and the community outreach director for IPAC, which is a PAC for independent voters, but also advocating and promoting a community's voice towards politicians or officials who are running for office. Apart from that, he is also a businessman and is a very well-renowned advocate in the community for good and broader things as well. So thank you, Rizwanji, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Patty, and I go way back, probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years. And Patty's joining us all the way from North Carolina. Patty, thank you for taking the time out today. You look great as usual. And Patty is the founder of Saris to Suits, and she is also very much involved in charitable work. But you might know her as the first Indian American who got on anchoring into the TV station. So thank you, Patty. You made history already and inspiring many. So thank you for joining us today. And Stephanie is the director for Asian Americans Advancing Justice. Stephanie, I have very important questions for you tonight. But Stephanie, apart from that, I've seen you running around and always being in the out front. And a work of an advocate is very hard, because how do you mobilize, right? It's so hard to mobilize a population, a community towards a cause. So we continue to wish you the best and thank you for all you do. And I think inclusion and diversity is one of your main aspect for the Asian American Advocating for Justice organization, and she is the executive director for that organization. So thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. We do have Leo Smith. I know Leo from probably 5 years ago when I ran for office, and Leo was the director for minority and diversity in the GOP arena. So, Leo, I'm sure you've been through several processes and journeys, and now you've started your own firm. And we congratulate you for that. And do you want to name that firm? It's called Futures. Can you unmute yourself? You have to unmute. Can't hear you, Leo.
Sorry, I think I talk so much that I'm actually tired of listening to myself.
So what's your
The name of
organization called?
The name of the company, Engaged Futures Group,
Yes,
LLC.
definitely. So we wish you all the best, and you are the executive director and the founder as well. So go, Leo, get the people out to vote, right?
Right.
Thank you
That's
again for joining us. Initially, I hope and hopefully I've introduced all of us here in the session today. And thank you again for joining. And let's get it rolling. Diane, my first question is for you. I know you're in the beaches. You're much relaxed than all of us. Believe me.
Can you tell I have a tan?
No, not just the tan, even the smile. So, Diane, tell me, what are you most proud of?
Can't hear you.
What are you most proud of?
Well, I think I am most proud of the fact that I have the courage to run for office, even when the odds are stacked against you. You run because you believe in the process and because you believe in the ability to be able to change the outcomes in your community. So I'm proud of the fact that I do have the courage to run. I've ran several times, so I know how to lose and I know how to win. So if you need some coaching, just pick up the phone and call me.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Diane. We appreciate you. My next question is for Shri. Shri, which one thing do you wish you had done differently? Shri, can you hear us? Shri, are you on?
Hello everyone. Yeah. So I wanted to be a social worker, and I am one today. You're asking something that I would have done differently. A lot of people ask me to run for office. That's something I really don't want to. I want to be an advocate for people that I work with, and try to influence the lawmakers to work towards policies that will benefit the vulnerable populations that I work with. So I don't regret not running for office, but I like to do more of grassroots, advocacy, and try to influence in that way.
Very nice, Shri. And I've recently learned never say never. So you never know, we might be rooting for you soon. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So Karthik, my next question is for you. If you have won $1 million, what would you do with it?
In $1 million, I mean, obviously I invest in the business so people get a job, economy get more strong. And see, if you donate the money, people cannot what? People be the lazy. It's better you can give them job and make economy strong and make our nation to the strong and pay income tax and help our armed forces.
Very nice. Very humble indeed. So thank you, Karthik, for your. But think of us. We are also here when you do win that $1 million.
Yes, I hope.
So,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm businessman, so I always like to put in the market. So I grow, all people grow.
very nice.
It's
Yes,
win-win situation.
definitely, we agree with you. Fred, the next question is for you. If you were to write a book about yourself, how would you name it?
Wow. Probably living in the fast lane. People who know me know that I have a heavy foot, so I think it's a good metaphor for both fast cars that I like and how I like to live my life, which is always in the fast lane. Kind of take, you never know, life is short, so live one day at a time. Kind of maximize what you do every day. Have no regrets at the end of the day.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Rizwan, my next question is for you. What does life mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. What life means to me primarily is about service and about character. And I think if you focus on offering a service with character and integrity, then things work out well for the most part. So I would say that those are the two that define what life means to me.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Well said indeed. Patty, the next question is for you. If you had a magic stick in your hand, and the Halloween is coming tomorrow, but anyway, if you had a magic stick in your hand, what would those three things be that you would want to change in the world?
I thought this was going to be easy. My charity is about women's empowerment and to inspire women and to get girls educated. It would be great to see a woman, female president one day and to serve the community, which I've been doing since I founded this charity, what, 8 years ago. And I asked you, we come out with a calendar every year where we feature 12 women, some very well known and some doing some great things that are not in the spotlight. We've had Malala in there. We've had the first Miss America of Indian origin, and we've also had you, right? This was before I moved back to Atlanta. And I have some good news. I was complaining about I can't vote because my mail-in ballot never came in, and I was furious, and I thought it was a scam. I had alerts set up. It was sent 2 weeks ago, and guess what?
Oh, wow. Awesome. I know you were a little bit stressed yesterday, so that's
I was
good.
stressed. I was really upset.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
but I don't know how I'm going to get this back to them, FedEx back by Tuesday.
You can
And
do it.
so, yeah, my journey has been, seeking the truth from being a television news anchor for, gosh, almost 20 years, and then becoming the executive director of the U.S. India Political Action Committee in Washington, D.C., going to graduate school, starting my media relations firm, and my charity, which doesn't pay me but gives me a lot of joy, getting these calendars out to battered women's shelter. And we have a fund established to for women who are victims or survivors of domestic violence.
Very nice. Thank you, Patty, for all you do. Really very much needed. And in fact, we hear in COVID times, domestic violence has really increased. So let's continue to get that knowledge out there. Thank you. Stephanie, my question for you is who's someone you admire and why? Or respect and why?
There's so many people. I guess I would say that right now, it's sort of always top of mind is Maya Angelou is always somebody that I think about a lot. I think about Bell Hooks a lot. And I just think of folks who really have taken on the heart and the mind and have put it into words in such a beautiful way, in a way that I could never do, and put into those thoughts like, oh, that's when I wish I could say in such an eloquent and beautiful way. So I really appreciate writers.
Very nice. Thank you. Leo, if you had to travel anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Well, I think
India.
to Tibet.
Singapore.
Is that what I said?
No, go ahead,
Did you
Leo.
say
You
India?
tell us your choice. Definitely make
No,
India as one.
to Tibet would be a place that I would visit.
Wow, okay.
I really enjoy spiritual journey, spiritual understanding across difference, and people who make great sacrifice to preserve their culture have always been of great interest to me, and so I had a great interest in visiting Tibet. And I've met the Dalai Lama a few times.
Very nice, Leo. I would have never guessed. So it's good to know. We just ask some questions and we find out more about people. So thank you, Leo. So my first question is for Stephanie. So Stephanie, usually politicians are motivated like the rest of us, right? And most of us and almost all of us have some personal agenda in anything and everything we do. Either we are passionate about it, or there's more money in it, or getting connected gets us more. So I'm sure politicians have their own agenda for getting into the field. But my question is, how do you think governments and politicians can work more effectively? Because I think ultimately it's about serving the community, and sometimes the personal agenda has to be put in the back burner. But we want to hear from you of why is it important, and having been in the chief of staff position in the county level, I've seen from inside and outside, how politicians make decisions for what reasons. Sometimes it's for the benefit, sometimes it's really not for the benefit. But please tell us why it's important for the government and politicians to work together.
I think we have one really good example right now with voting, the issues of COVID, and being able to have things in different languages, particularly in the Asian American space here in Georgia. We had a huge win where we worked with DeKalb County. We asked several counties, especially during COVID, can you consider putting things in different languages, right? We gave them a whole list of, these are the communities that are limited English proficient. These are the languages that would really help during the election. And other government agencies, you can get stuff translated. Obviously, with schools, they're translating a whole bunch of different information that they weren't before. So especially now, shouldn't you have a way to be able to communicate around voting, especially now when people are in these different places and are isolated so much more? So we wrote letters to all the counties about it, and DeKalb was the only one that actually was interested in moving something forward quickly. So we just won having Korean and Spanish materials. They just came out today, so it's not as early as we wanted it to be, but they just came out today. And in Georgia, unfortunately, this is the first time that anything has been translated in voting in any Asian language in Georgia. Korean is the first, right? It should not, and for us, we see it as like, this is our foot in the door. This should hopefully light the fire around the state, the other counties. And we worked really well with the commissioners. The commissioners were the ones that actually pushed it through. It wasn't the Board of Election. It was the commissioners that said, yes, we have this money. We really want this to happen. What can we do? We gave them the translation service that we use. We said, hey, we adopt a community review. So you should also have a native speaker that also reviews the documents before you put it out. And so it wasn't the fastest process, but it was a process that really mattered. And for us to be on a call with the commissioners, with other advocates that we'd been working on language access for a long time, and voters who got to see for the first time, this ballot in their language, I mean, that is huge. It was a very emotional sort of experience. And this is the part where government and government officials and advocates can work really well together. This is something that I mean, a lot of people, it took a lot for folks to come together, but it was this beautiful thing that can happen. So sometimes I think people get frustrated. I mean, I get frustrated as well as an advocate, but this is something where people are like, yes, and they came from, I guess, a place of like, let's work together. And I think that's what made the difference.
Okay, sounds good. So the reason I'm getting you the second question is because I know you have to leave in the next 10 minutes. I just want to make sure we hear some more from you before you leave. How do you think the online platform of campaigning or getting the message out, do you think it has really shifted? Is it for the positive or for the negative? Because I know there's so much going on through the online media.
I think there needs to be tremendous amount of regulations that haven't really caught up with the technology. So I watched that documentary and I cannot remember the name of it right now.
Yeah, on
That really-
Netflix, right? Yeah. Oh, yes,
Netflix,
yes.
what I can't remember. I'm sure somebody can say what it is. It blew my mind, and it really made me think a lot about how technology just the laws haven't caught up with technology, which I understand, and so I think that's the part that needs to be looked at is the regulations. But during COVID times, it totally makes sense to do more online ads. Also, we've been utilizing to help register people to vote, for people to look at stuff. We have these, I guess, sandwich boards that we've been putting out at the different ethnic malls and at churches and at mosques and temples, where you just can use your phone to click on the QR code. You can look to see if you're registered. Is it social? No, it's not social network. It's the other
No,
one.
it's a social dilemma.
The social dilemma.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you, Fred. Yeah. So that was going to bother me. So those kinds of things have been definitely an asset. And so I think about the future of voting, right? Can't we take this technology, right? There's so much technology that we could use to really make voting so much safer, so much more efficient, so much more effective. And so that's what I hope is the future of it. Obviously, we can have it in all these different languages. There are so many possibilities now. So I think it's actually a great thing to have more online stuff, but there needs to be more advocates that are willing to understand the technology behind what kind of regulations would need to be in place for it to be done safely.
Very nice. So let me follow up with that question, Stephanie. I know you said material, so I'm not thinking it's the ballot actually translated.
So unfortunately, they couldn't have the ballot like in the ballot box translated, but the sample ballot is done. So when you go in the sample ballot in Spanish and in Korean, and you can print it out and have it with you, or you can actually just look at it on your phone. So it's on the website, the DeKalb website now. The other thing that they did was they translated like the frequently asked questions sheet. They also translated information about where the new ballot boxes are, information about just voting in general, which is huge, right? And it just shows that it doesn't take that much. It's not that much money. It doesn't take that much really resources to do it. It's more just the will, right? Because there's the issue that, people, for whatever reason, are thinking that getting more folks to vote is a problem. And I don't understand that concept at all. More access is always better, right? More people part of democracy is better. More people involved in civic life, especially the local. Nazeera, the local is really the most important, right? This is like your school. This is like your community. These are your community centers. This is really, really important. And so that change is like what is magical to me. Obviously, people get more excited about a presidential race, but it's really all of that stuff. The local stuff is what people really need to pay attention to, because that is really what's going to make a huge difference. Also, Georgia's changing. I mean, this is the time to really make sure that the people that you want have the same values as you and get those folks elected. Those are the people that are really going to advocate for your needs of yourself and your family.
Definitely. Thank you. And I know we're going to discuss more with the other panelists about the social media and the fake news and how people get caught into it. But Stephanie, so let me say, I have a feeling that each one that I see on the screen, along with Simran, are going to run for office. I've done my part, so I'm not going to go there again. But I can see each one of you running for office in some way or the other. So, hopefully we can see that as a reality. But Stephanie, any closing comments before you leave?
I'm just very sorry that I cannot hear the rest of the folks because I know this panel is like really good, and so but please I'd like to keep in touch. I mean, I'm very I think this panel is amazing. So thank you, Nazeera.
Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. So, Patty, my next question is for you. You have always been about women and gender equity or equality, and how can women be a part of the decision making. You've also advocated always for their representation. And I think in your introduction, you sort of said it is not happening, right? So what do you think are the structural or the political obstacles, either in the electoral system or economic or cultural existing barriers that prevent women in leadership to be in leadership positions, especially in the political system or the political process? In fact, instead of asking such a long, lengthy question, what I'm asking is there are so many countries across the world who've seen a woman as a front end political leader, including the country that I'm from. But tell me, Patty, how can that be addressed? What are the barriers?
It's really hard to understand being a first world country how we are lagging behind so many third world countries. Korea, Makapagao, Arroyo, you have Benazir Bhutto, Indira Gandhi, Sukarno Putri, and why that is. And you see that, even with Kamala Harris, we're so politically divided. So people can't see beyond the party that they're aligned with. So people were criticizing the way she looked, the way she talked. So I'm not quite sure, why that is, but it is progress nevertheless. She is the third person to run for on a ticket as a vice presidential candidate and could potentially become the president. We don't know that. That's progress in itself. And why we are behind is just really a mystery to me compared to so many countries out there. Um, but more are emerging. We might see Nikki Haley come up. And there are a lot of women at the local level, just not at, somebody being poised to take over this is see that possibly might be somebody that can become Madame President, um, depending on which party wins.
Okay, so do you think there are anything specific to cultural obstacles that's not allowing women to come up in the political system to take up leadership positions?
In the US,
Mm-hmm.
and cultural obstacles you think would be in the patriarchal societies like the ones that we come from in South Asia. So why it is here, you saw how Hillary Clinton got attacked. So, I don't know how to answer that, but it's just nice to see some progress
Okay.
in that direction.
Sounds good. And looks like you are already adding such advocacy or influence for women to take up leadership positions. So thank you, Patty. Simran, my next question is for you. As we know, all of us, that activism has been in the forefront, especially during this time and involvement. But traditionally, young people have shied away from the political process or the political system. So, what advice, Simran, do you have for the young people who are feeling uninspired by the state of our politics?
I am so glad you asked me that question. I was trying to figure out what are the different types of questions you might ask me, can you
I'm
hear me?
sorry, I didn't give you any of, even though I said I might, because I wanted y'all to just impromptu give answers. That's who you are. So, yep.
Yeah, I figured with after seeing the poster being on the younger side, I was just thinking, this is gonna be a question. But I think when people say that kids are lazy or kids are too young to understand politics, I think these comments are often spewed from all ends of the political spectrum and are kind of aimed as attacks on young adults. I think when they say this, it only discourages young adults to go and vote. If you scroll on your social media at all, you know that neither laziness nor hypocrisy is exclusive to, let's say, 18 to 29-year-olds. We are probably consistently 80% of the more political spectrum on social media taking a stand. And if there is a year to prove that, it is 2020. Whether you talk about Black Lives Matter movement, whether you talk about climate change, whether you talk about gun control, there are young people behind everything. The issue is voter suppression. I'll give you an example. I go to the University of Georgia, go Dogs. I had today off. Today's Friday. I had today off with fall break, but I don't have November 3rd off for voting. So that makes me want to think is why can't we get out of class? Why can't we get out of lab to just go vote and practice? And it's even worse for students who go to out of state colleges and universities, because the issue is in many states, you need a state ID in order to vote in the state you're trying to vote in. Now, many people imagine you're going from Georgia to New York for school. You don't have the state ID for New York. You have the state ID from Georgia. So there are these issues that are presented by the system that prevents us to vote. I don't think it's that we don't want to vote. I think we've proven that in 2020, if not in any other year. But I think it's the ways that we can't vote. For a lot of us, it's if we have to miss class and go vote. Some people understand that yes, these elections only come every 4 years. We have to go vote. But some people truly don't understand that, and some people want to stay in class. So this divide in between part-time workers and school versus voting is a huge issue for young adults.
And Nazeera, sorry, I have to add this because I think Simran talks about something very important, right? And I think Stephanie or someone else brought this up earlier. It's not so much that people don't want to vote, but we make it harder, right? It's not that people don't want to register to vote, make it harder. Not everybody has a driver's license. Not everybody has a US passport. It is easier to register to join the military than it is to vote in most states. 18-year-olds can join the military much easier, right? And why is that we make it harder for 18-year-olds to vote,
But this
right?
year, people are so afraid of catching COVID and waiting in long lines. It took me 2 weeks to get this mail-in ballot, and it got here today. I'll have to FedEx it tomorrow for it to get there on Tuesday. It's more can be done, whether it's organizing bus trips or helping elderly to get there. So it's challenging.
Definitely.
Right. But let's talk about those issues, right? So why shouldn't, I mean, let's raise this higher. Why shouldn't election day be a holiday? I mean, we have the holidays for the silliest things in this country, right? And so do other countries, right? But election every once in 4 years, right? So it's not going to be a drain on the economy. Somebody says, oh, geez, I can't afford, come on, So it's just excuses. I think it's just raising the fact, bring it up higher, and it'll get done. And Patty, sorry, I have one more thing. I know you're in Georgia, right? When I went to vote at the local library, there was a ballot box, right? There's an absentee ballot box outside, so you can go drop it off. Don't have to wait in line, but it's absolutely secure. It's at the library that I went to in most polling stations. So if you're worried about your ballot getting in time, I would recommend just drive up to your local, it's 24 hours, right? Just go drop it off in a ballot box.
I'm in North Carolina right now.
Yeah, I thought that's what she was saying, and I think she's doing the right thing being in North Carolina to FedEx overnight that to get here.
Got it.
There's no option. I was writing letters to Fulton County, getting so irate that I had text set up that it would inform me when it was sent. So
Sure.
It literally took 2 weeks. But by the way, I want to also mention Amy Coney Barrett, and that's I've posted a lot of stuff on my Facebook, and whether I post something about Democrats, there's just really awful messages that go on there. She went to school at my school, where I graduated from, the University of Notre Dame, at the same town that I grew up in, South Bend, Indiana, where Mayor Pete Buttigieg is from. So Notre Dame, South Bend has been in the news a lot lately. And so she's one to be commended as a woman, whether you agree or what you expect that she will, her opinions or her beliefs or what, are going to play into, the way she interprets its constitution. It's just still quite remarkable for a woman, 49-year-old.
Definitely, yes. All points considered and taken, and I think definitely efforts are being made, Fred, and probably we can discuss as we move forward. They might have more information about, getting a day off or a holiday for the voting day. So, Diane, my next question is for you. Whatever government policies are made, we are all responsible for it, right, in some way or the other, and because it impacts us as citizens. But it's not as easy to make just a policy decision. I'm going to vote yes and leave. There are going to be media distractions. There are going to be social media comments and whatnot going for you when you are in that hot seat making such a decision. So tell us, as a previous former councilwoman, how did you make policy decisions?
Well, that's a real good question, and thank you for asking it. When I was the councilwoman for the largest district in a brand new city, the city of Stonecrest, I always made decisions using integrity as the platform. I ran my campaign on transparency, accountability, and integrity. And I lived and breathed, and I was removed for the same thing. And so I think it's important for people to know that being a politician is not for the weak, the frail, the sensitive. You have to have thick skin to run for office. You have to decide between what's good for the people versus your personal opinions. And that is where a lot of politicians get in trouble. And let me give some examples. When I first became a politician and we went to training, I'll never forget the first thing Georgia Municipal Association taught us was that just because you can do it, it doesn't mean you should do it. An example would be if someone's trying to put, some type of project in your community that is not good for the benefit of the people. If you err, you should always err on the side of what's good for the people. And what happens today is the politicians, it's kind of flipped, if I may talk about that a little bit. The people are afraid of the politicians. It's supposed to be the other way. So we have to elect people who are not afraid to make tough decisions if that decision is good for the community. That is not popular today. And what I would like to see, going back to the young people, is to galvanize and mobilize these young people so that they really understand what it means to lead in a crisis, or what it means to lead when you're the only one who's maybe standing up for what is right. That is where you can decide. That is where the decisions are made, is when you can stand up and maybe be the only one. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong because you're the only one. I think we got to go back to the basics in politics where people understand how laws are made. They're never made when you're in your comfort zone. And so going back to the original question, I think we have to elect people with integrity. We have to elect people who would be transparent, and we have to elect people who are not afraid to stand up for what is right. We don't have that. And I'll even go just a little step further and touch on, somebody was talking about making it easier for people to vote. I think everyone agrees that even probably in all the political parties, there's some form of voter suppression. But I think where we may have missed the mark a little bit is that in the states of Montana and in the states of Washington, D.C., not Washington, D.C., the state of Washington, and there are two other states, I can't remember what they are voting via their smartphones. So if two states, I mean, it's 4 states, I only know of 2 of them. If 4 states can vote from the convenience of their cell phone, all states can vote from the convenience of a cell phone. If I can buy a house online, if I trust an ATM machine with cash money, if I can buy a car online, if I can trade my stocks and my 401k online, by golly, can't I vote online? Why do I have to stand in a traditional line to cast any vote in 2020? I'm totally against long lines for voting. I should be able to vote from the comforts of my home. I should be able to vote from my vehicle or from my backyard playing with my pet. If I'm elderly and disabled, I should be able to vote. If I'm military, I should be able to vote from my cell phone. If I can spend my money from my cell phone, I should be able to vote from the same device.
Definitely. I guess there are so many other cofactors to that, including technology, no fraud being done, and all that. So definitely, we might come to that stage. At least I don't know if any of you see it in the near future. It's going to take a long process, lengthy process to get there. And probably when Simran, in 10 years or, 12 years, when she's already sitting in the council seat, we might happen to see that. But Rizwan, let's continue with what Diane talked about, right? And nowadays, what we are doing is, I think that the subject or the context has changed towards a politician than the issue itself. We see politicians who are not really bipartisanship. So we're going into a discussion of supporting the politician and not really into the issue. But can you tell us how has politics changed then and now? So probably 20 years ago, and you've been a part of this process for some time. What are the specific changes that you are seeing? Are you seeing it towards the betterment, or are you seeing some gaps that could definitely be improved?
Yeah, so it's a tough question, but let me first quickly take a moment to address what Diane was saying about making voting easier from your cell phone. And she's absolutely, Diane, you're absolutely right that we trust a lot on our technology. Trading stocks and buying a home, all those things are big deals. But voting is not allowed because it's intended to be that way, right? I mean, I think we all know that it can be done. Technology is available. Many countries, by the way, in the world who are less advanced technologically than we are actually allow voting by the convenience of your cell phone. I think it's pretty clear that we're talking about, or some people are talking about, the fact that mail-in ballots will have caused a lot of fraud. So you do a lot of transactions that we have in the past through mail, but the claim that there'll be a lot of voter fraud in mail-in ballots is the same claim, if not more so, that will be made that your vote, electronic vote, will be altered and counted incorrectly. A lot of machines today. I mean, not too long ago in Georgia, a lot of voting machines were being questioned that even when people show up on site and vote, that those votes were not counted correctly. So I think there's a lot of bad intentions out there that cause problems that people get and question the integrity of our system. Back to your question, Nazeera, about how things have changed. Disappointingly so. I think this partisanship and political divide and moral divide and divide amongst each one of us has so accentuated and made politics difficult that it's bad for us, it's bad for our country, it's bad for our future. And I think it is so important that we all come together and do again what Diane was saying, what's best for the country, even if it isn't best for me at that moment. Maybe it is best for the country that I pay a little more in taxes. That's okay. I don't mind that. So there's many factors like that. But what it boils down to is, what does the majority of people who vote, not the majority, but the majority of people who vote, what do they want? Because as much as politicians like Diane want to do the right thing, she doesn't get to do the right things unless she's elected. So a lot of politicians that come into the fray wanting to do the right thing, but the first priority is to get elected because they may stand for the right principles, but if the right principles are not popular with the people who are voting, and by the way, we know there's a lot of demographics in our country of people who don't vote in even at 50% range. That's part of what I was doing with IPAC is we've got to encourage people that in a democracy, if you don't exercise your right to vote, you're giving up that right to somebody else to decide for things on your behalf. So I think that the first requirement or expectation of any politician is to get elected. And the second one is to stay elected. And to stay elected, you stand for what it is that's going to get you elected as opposed to what's the right thing to do. I hope and wish and we would want that politicians do what's right for the country, what's right for the people. But you don't really see that happening anymore. Maybe, and I think in not too past a memory, we saw more of that going on. We saw that there were political differences, that people got together, politicians got together to do what was best for the country and were able to communicate with one another. It doesn't happen now. So it's disappointing, and one can hope and pray and engage. Engaging is the most important thing. Enough of us engage and demand, not by any other way, but by voting, that politicians come together and do what's best for the people, then hopefully things will change. So the answer really is we have to understand what the politicians stand for. They come up and give speeches in the stump that isn't always true. So it takes a lot of effort and work to really understand what they stand for. And then we demand with our vote what is best for the country.
Definitely. Thank you, Win. We appreciate your views on this, Rizwan. As you've seen, probably you might have come to US, even some of us as immigrants have come in and noticed that changes. So hopefully we all can work towards the betterment and bringing people united and not divided. So Karthik, my next question is for you. We see a lot of first-time politicians, especially running even last season or this season, right? On both sides of the aisle. What does this trend mean for the future of American politics, right? And the reason I'm asking this is we also hear of the political system being poisonous or dysfunctional. But can you also, apart from answering that question, tell us who should be the voice for the community, right? What does it mean to have a voice?
I mean, see, I'm like public servant for the like. I'm not community leader first. I'm like public servant, and you see the Republican Party's U.S. Senator Carrie Loeffler. She is not politician. She never been to DC. She is a businesswoman, and she's like, uh, and she grew up in the farm, and and Governor Kemp appoint her as a U.S. senator. So she knows what's the dollar come from, what is people real life. So this time now, Republican people like the diversity and give the business people to chance to go to the Washington D.C. and represent to the community.
Okay, so
Yeah,
who has the right to speak for a community? Um,
I
uh,
mean, everyone have a right to speak for community. I mean, USA is open for everyone. I mean, it's not me or not you. Like anyone can speak. This is for the freedom plus freedom of the religions. And in the USA, they never see black, white, Hindu, Muslim. Amita is not a racist country. Amita is for equal opportunity for everyone.
okay,
So
sounds.
anyone can speak and anyone can do take the lead.
So, do you have any message for those who are wanting to run but are hesitating to run for office because of the mudslinging or things that can turn their life upside down?
I mean, I just say people need to move forward. People need to work for community and just get the chance because America is not a racist country. We all are human. One blood, their blood. One days, human days. And America believe for liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
And that's all. We all are the people.
Definitely. Thank you, Karthik. Fred, tell us a little bit about your journey becoming a citizen. recently, and what are the responsibilities of a citizen, and and also who or what are we responsible for. So I would like to hear how your thoughts has changed before you became a citizen. Were you involved in the political process, and what made you get involved now and go make that first vote? Because I know citizens who just sat back for 20, 30 years have never voted as an immigrant as well. So I would like to know what made you go and vote, and how has your thoughts changed pre-citizenship and now?
So maybe I'll start there with how your thoughts have changed, right? So personally, of course, I'm just telling you my personal story. So I came to this country about 22 years ago to pursue grad school. Then started working, went through the whole H1 process for a while, and then got my green card and then applied for citizenship. So that was my journey, which is very atypical, I would think. So to answer your question, it did not change overnight. Just because I had that piece of paper, it did not change my thoughts. It changed my status, but not my thoughts. To put it in perspective, the day I became my dad, sorry, that was night and day, right? The previous day, there was no baby. The next day, I'm holding a baby. That changed my world upside down, right? That's a dramatic paradigm shift in your life. In this case, I was always involved. I knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't have the right to vote. So the only difference in my mind is I was able to go in there and vote. Now, it does give me a sense of purpose in terms of saying, okay, now I am part of the political system and I have a voice. So it kind of empowers you in your mind as opposed to earlier, to be honest with you, and without going into political affiliation, no matter what you're mad about or who you're mad about, you're frustrated. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't do anything about it. And right. And that's a little bit, it's limiting in some ways. So if anything, yes, I get mad at whatever issues we all are passionate about. And at least now the only consolation is, man, I don't agree with this, but God damn it, I'm going to have my voice heard every 4 years. Right. So that to me is the biggest change. But in terms of my outlook, I don't think much has changed. I think we all grow, whether you're citizens or not. Your experiences in this country are the same, right? Nobody's treating me any different today just because last year I became a citizen versus before that. And that kind of segues back into what Karthik was saying. You must be a lot more optimist than I am. You must have the most positive outlook in the world because I may be a little bit more of a realist, but I don't see America through the same lens as you do, Karthik, right? I love this country, of course. I live here. I am a citizen. But I also think it's our job to question, right, the inaccuracies or the shortcomings of any country, right? The minute we stop doing that, we allow poisonous, things to grow. So to make a blanket statement saying America is not a racist country, well, I don't know if we can make that statement, right? I see enough things, and I don't think we all live in everybody's shoes to make such a statement. And the reason I'm bringing that up is it might be very hurtful for somebody who's gone through the most difficult, challenging experiences to have half the country or most of the country say, oh, no problem, everything is great, right? So I just wanted to kind of, come back to that a little bit because it may just be your personal, very positive outlook or your personal experiences, which I mean, great. But to say that as a general statement, I think is a little assuming.
So, we did have a session on racism and how to address it. And I think what we learned was sometimes some things about not knowing, right? And I think there was not enough bridges built between those who knew that race and who didn't know that race or had opposite opinions, expressions about the other race. So I think getting involved, I think Karthik is also getting involved. So me, when I used to be in county government, I only saw my face as Indian on the 10th floor, which is as high and political as it can get. And so that's what we need to do to break those racial inequalities or inefficiencies that happen. So definitely, I think all of us getting involved as even minorities into the stages that people have never been before will definitely make that understanding and knowing of who we are. So we are pulling that fear off of the unknown, right? So Fred also talked to us about the influence of social media and the TV media about the politics of the politics, right? And
Right.
I usually don't get involved into what I see. I just keep, at a distance for the reason that sometimes it's like, sometimes like, ooh, and ah. And it's like every day you have to have change of your facial expressions, which I don't want to. So tell me, how is social media and media influencing people to vote? And Leo is already smiling. Leo, I'm coming to you next.
So I think somebody kind of brought this up earlier, and I'm glad you're bringing this up again. Somebody mentioned about social media, right? See, at the end of the day, social media is a tool, right? Don't blame the tool, blame the people using it for good or bad. And if you go back to anything in the history, I'm not talking about just social media now, right? The invention of the car, some people hated it, right? They said, well, I own a horse farm. What am I going to do with all my horses? Well, they probably thought it was the worst thing that could happen to them, but look how we've evolved. Think about the hydrogen bomb, right? It was built, meant for something good in life, and then it created all this destruction. So I think we're at an inflection point when it comes to social media because there's so much of it. So there's two ways you can look at it, right? Does it bring you information about things that you could have never imagined before? Absolutely, right? You want to look up somebody's track record in 5 seconds. I can pull up their entire history of their voting records. If you go back 50 years ago, if I was a very concerned, awoke citizen, I still was very limited to my either daily newspapers or my Sunday newspaper or, my couple of friends who I trusted. But now it literally opens the world for you to fact check anything you want and get any information you want. That's the good side. What's the bad side? Well, by the same rationale, it opens it up to anybody with an opinion, right? I call this the crazy uncle or the crazy guy at the corner of the street. We used to have people like that before. People would shout crazy theories at the corner of the street. What did we do? We walked away from them. That person's voice reached about 4 people at best, right? But now anybody with access to social media can post anything, and there's a sense of legitimacy associated to it, right? And again, we're not trying to get political, but the fact that we live in an age where QAnon can have as much legitimacy as the New York Times, the fact that we have to debate the New York Times article versus a QAnon article, we're already lost, right? I mean, this should not even be a conversation about these things. So how is it that social media is given an equal platform to crazy theories out there, right? To conspiracy theories, which earlier would have just been a corner footnote in nobody's business, right? So my point is, how is social media affected? Well, it's really your outlook. I think everybody has to look at it and say, I can get the best of social media or I can get the worst of social media. The onus is really on us as citizens. I don't blame the tool. I know there's a lot of talk about regulation. Regulation is good and I support it, but don't blame 1 or 2 tools that you think is causing all this destruction. If Twitter went away tomorrow, there will be another tool that takes its place. Don't blame the tool.
Okay, sounds good. And we take that. So Leo, my question for you is, actually, I think political scientists say people vote based on the cost benefit analysis, right? The cost of voting versus what are they going to get out of it. What I want to discuss is the core of the topic today. Discuss the importance of voting in a democracy and also tell us the demographics of who is voting at a higher rate or at a lower rate and what can it be done, because I think that's one of the many rights. It's how can you be a citizen and not vote, right? So I'm passionate about it. I mean, I can't imagine not voting, and probably if I didn't get into the political system, I might sit back and like, it's just another thing. But I look at people who don't vote and they're a citizen as like they've lost something very, very precious. So Leo, talk to us about the importance of democracy and voting.
Well, thank you, for that question, those questions. It's been wonderful listening to everyone. What Fred introduced is the idea of data being available that is now corrupted in some cases because of political motivations. And that is one of the challenges of our First Amendment. So when someone makes a cost-benefit analysis, they make it based on the consideration of the data available for the decision that has to be made. And throughout the history of America and our voting system, our democratic republic, the representational aspect of choosing someone to carry an agenda that has been, discussed, vetted, used data to tell us this is the agenda that we need to do to accomplish this, that, or the other. Those agendas change over time based on data. And so what we're struggling with here, that the relational web that we need to develop in order to say, this person can work with me in our joint interests, all those things have been really disrupted. And that's been disrupted in part because the data we're getting is not clear, and oftentimes it has very little integrity. And so that is a challenge of the freedom that we have in our First Amendment. The responsibility for that, which I've heard throughout this discussion, lots of discussion about accountability and responsibility, who can speak for whom, etc. And we used to assume that statesmen and stateswomen would base, their leadership and their voice for a community or a policy, that their advocacy would be based on data that was real and true. But now we can assume that most of the time it's going to be designed to increase our dopamine, to change our chemical makeup, or to just throw a grenade in the room so that we get lots of hits on a video. And we can either make money off of that through Google ads, or we can do other things. I've jokingly said that perhaps we should have a sin tax on political advertising, because there's so much improper data out there that we're miseducating people, and the nihilism that's going to come, it's going to be devastating, just like smoking cigarettes or drinking. So as we look at the demographics in our nation that are voting, in fact, we know all the way back from Workforce 2000 that the demographics in our nation are changing. The voting patterns of our nation are changing as well. And up until 2016, white Americans, for instance, in the United States had started to really struggle in their voting turnout. Now, in Georgia, on this particular day, we've had a 71% voting turnout already. It's record. So, in other words, people are looking at the cost-benefit analysis of not voting versus voting. And when democracy is at stake, and I think we can all agree, whether we're partisan or not, we're in a situation where civic engagement, trust of our system, not only the distrust that we have long had of politicians, but the trust in the system's integrity and ability to help us live out our dreams and our ideas of America is really at stake. Democracy is on the ballot. So now we're seeing an increase in turnout from African Americans. We're seeing an increase in turnout from Latinos. We're seeing an increase in turnout for first generation Americans, because they really feel like the dream they had about America is really at stake. So the cost benefit analysis, Americans are not dumb. They do vote their interests. And there was a group of people who weren't voting that the political party that I worked with tremendously decided to tap into based on our dwindling demographics. We decided, well, let's find an example of a universe of voters that had not been had not been voting. We had not been dating them. We had not been engaging with them. And so that universe came out listening some of the dog whistles that our president, Donald Trump, has thrown out at it on occasion. That universe started voting. Now, I'm not going to give them a name because I think we throw those names out too easily. But we know that dog whistling happens in politics now, and that universe comes out and votes. And then the lazy political consultants who said, instead of engaging people across policy, reason, science, that's hard work. I would have to go to Johns Creek. I would have to go to places I don't normally go. I have to go to Beaufort Highway. I have to go to South Atlanta and talk to people who normally don't vote for me about policy and ideas and reason. Really, really tough. Much easier to throw a grenade in the room and see if we can just get some people to respond on emotion. And that is the political science that's being used right now in politics, especially on the side that I most identify with. The William F. Buckley, conservative intellectuals of the world are gone. Political consultants are selling us on emotionalism and sensationalism, and it's damaging our democracy. And we must challenge that. We must expect more from the political consultants hired by the politician to be accountable to a standard of excellence, of truth and reason and belief that American intelligence should be respected.
So, wow, that's a lot said, Leo. So tell me, I know you do assist candidates for campaigning if they're running for office. What percentage of candidates, and I'm bringing this up because Diane initially talked about integrity. What percentage of, and you don't have to answer this, what percentage of candidates show a shift towards a policy that they don't believe in just because they have to win the seat? I
Well,
mean,
you
they
know,
vote against their conscience. I mean, they advocate against their conscience.
yeah, I think it looks different on both sides because, the Republicans have now gotten into an extremism. My party has gotten into an extremism based on, again, the facilness of just throwing out stuff based on social trends and interests and fears. And a perfect example is actually Representative Kelly Loeffler, who I invited to speak at Ebenezer as my guest. She came there and I wanted to introduce her to the community as a candidate. But it would shock me that just weeks later, based on data for her to win, she turned into this far right QAnon supportive. She now runs around with Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is sort of the whacked out kind of candidate that is really making us not believe in conservative policy considerations anymore. So she jumps into a big truck with her and starts co-signing and positioning herself, someone like that, saying horrible things about Black people, saying horrible things about Stacey Abrams, who actually was on her board of directors for her own basketball team, which is mostly African American. The craziness of this to make criticize liberal or left leaning women, to criticize left leaning women and try and present yourself as this super socially conservative person when you don't even share the same name of your own husband. I mean, it's very strange that you would so in other words, I'm not saying that she should share the same name, but how unusually disingenuous it is to create and craft an image of yourself only to win an election, only to win while America loses because you have corrupted truth.
So I'm sure you have many more examples of that from either side of the aisle, Leo. And running for office, I faced that, and it was hard. I had to go with what my conscience and be able to sleep in the night, and that was a tough decision because you are going against the populist belief of the people in the community sometimes. So Shri, my next question, and thank you, Leo. Shri, my next question is for you. Nearly 100 million American citizens did not vote in 2016. And that's a huge, staggering, astonishing statistics. Do you think since then things have been done to bring those 100 million Americans out? And I know previously we just talked about a little bit about who are the demographics Leo just talked about. But do you think things have really improved since then? And my other question is, might be 80% of them, it was hard for them to register and to vote, or maybe they were citizens but they were prevented from voting. So tell me how important it is for people to make it easier to register and to vote first.
Sure. Speaking on behalf of the organization that I represent, it's called the Voice of the Indian American Voters. So basically, this was started by a group of community leaders in Chicago. It is a nonpartisan platform that is trying to increase and promote civic engagement in the Indian American community. It is a known fact that a lot of Indian Americans have not been very active in the political scene, and they focus more on their families and their employment, and don't give that much of importance to being engaged in civic duty. So when our community realized that we need to do something to inform our people that how important some of the decisions that are being made by the lawmakers, we need to be responsible as a citizen of this country and be engaged. We actually tried to arrange forums when there was like the Chicago mayoral election a couple of years ago. We also had smaller candidate meet and greet sessions, and where we invited the candidates to talk to our community, tell us about what they stand for, so the voters are able to make a decision on who they want to support. So activities like this has definitely, brought about the awareness, and especially now with the presidential election, we did have an online forum again on Zoom where we invited the Trump campaign director to speak to our Indian American voters. We also had the political director from the Biden campaign talk to us about why, they want the Indian Americans to vote for them. So such kind of events, I think, has definitely made a difference. And in Illinois, in the county where I live, right now we almost have about 200,000 mail-in ballots that have already been received by the county election office. And it's good to know that more people are coming out because they want to understand that there are issues that are important to them, and it does impact our lives. And we need to be more focused on who we are electing and what are our values, and are these politicians aligning with our values and our goals for this country to be in a better place. So I think, this election definitely there is more active participation in every state, and you can hear that in the news, how many people have already voted. And I think the numbers are definitely showing that there has been a big change from the 2016 election.
So, Sri, let me also ask you, how important is it to diversify the government bodies, right?
Very
It is
important.
representation. It is a representation of the community that is out there, including the LGBTQ or people of color. So, please talk about that briefly.
Yes, definitely. Representation is so important. Again, the county where I live, we have a very high Asian American and Latino population. So, at every level of the government, like at the county level, the state level, or the federal level, you need to have people that represent who you are. So, for example, in my city council, for the first time, we do have an Indian American that is actually standing to be in the council. Also, at the state level, we had our very first Indian American senator that was elected 2 years ago. And that definitely speaks to the diversity that is important, because they understand our values, our needs, and are able to represent us at the local as well as the federal level. And I agree with you that a lot of people of color, people that have different religious backgrounds, are being able to get involved and be engaged in the civic duties of this country. And more and more people are actively getting involved, because the fabric of our country is made up of a lot of immigrants and people of different races and cultures, and that's how things should be done going forward too.
And of course,
So
you have Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy
right,
from your
yeah,
state as well. Yes, so he
yeah,
visited us a
yeah.
few years ago.
Exactly. And again, like I mentioned, Illinois had our very first Indian American, first generation senator elected in 2018, Ram Vilivalam. And, he is, bringing a lot of our concerns to the state and advocating on our behalf. And we're happy that, we were able to get him elected. And I think every state is doing similar things to get more representation.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your input. Simran, let's go to the millennials and the youngsters. Almost 83 million. Do you think if they all voted, or are they voting this time, will change the impact of the election?
100%. And I think I can single-handedly just say that if social media was never a play in the factor of all this, maybe not. Maybe, we wouldn't have come out and voted. But the beautiful thing is that social media came to, you know, the Obama administration, where Michelle Obama and Barack Obama really opened up Snapchats and Instagrams to get along with the younger voter population. Now that social media handy, we're able to see everything that President Trump says, everything that Vice President Biden is advocating for and says. So everything is incredibly transparent when we're just scrolling through our Instagrams or talking to each other on Snapchat and so on. So I think if every single young adult voter, or at least the majority of them, which is happening right now, which is awesome, the highest, you know, turnout for young adult votes, we can definitely change the pathway to what we want in this country.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Simran, for that confidence, and continue with it, and get all your friends to vote as well. So, Diane, my next question is for you, and I want to go back to some of the questions that I've been asked in the past, just to understand this political system about voting. So, why do you think Constitution left it to the states to decide about the processes for their voting, right? Are there pluses and minuses to it? Either Diane and maybe Leo, you can chime in.
Yes, another good question. There are pluses and minuses because you have to look at the demographic makeup of your state. You have to look at a host of factors when you're thinking about, when you're thinking about policies and voting laws. In order to deter or prevent or decrease voter suppression, you have to actually understand the data. You have to analyze the data. And in each state, you're going to have, you have different demographics. And I think that leaving it, I hate to see the feds step into a small community that maybe they know the voters. I know the voters in my district when I was the councilwoman. I I don't think someone in Washington knows my city like I do. And remember, all politics are what? Local. Everything starts on the local level. The local government is coined as the government that is closest to the people. As a council member, we could do a call meeting, go in, and with a majority vote, we can change or navigate something happening or deter something happening in our community. But if you're on that federal level, you cannot act that fast, and the laws does not usually take effect that fast. So you first have to understand the local makeup of your community. I think that government involvement is good in many aspects. Let me give some examples. The EPA, I want to know that my water and my air is safe. Think about the FDA. I want to know that my food, when I buy some ground beef, I want to know that it's safe. So the government provides oversight, but I certainly do not want them trying to micromanage what is happening in my little city here, where they may not have a clue about how we operate and what's good for my city. So to answer that question, I think it's a two-edged sword, but I think the most important thing is that you have elected officials and leaders, community leaders from all aspects of the community who understand the makeup of the community. And I think those people have to come to the table and form coalitions and task forces, and they have to understand and get together and collaborate on what is the best law. What are the best laws that we need to change, or what policies do we need to enact to decrease voter suppression? I don't think that can happen with passing one big generic law in Washington, and now you want to force my little community into this pigeonhole that could be devastating for my community. So, I think that when it comes to equality to me is based on where you are. And each community may be at a different place. So I'd like to see the states or the cities or the counties maintain some type of control over policy changes related to voting. And I think that in itself will help us pass maybe the best laws or better laws. I'm not saying that good laws cannot be passed on a federal level, because I do believe in the government. I think we have our good and our bad, but overall, I still think that we have one of the best governments in the world. And I stand by that. It's been a turbulent year for us, maybe a couple of years, but I think we have to look at government more on a local level. Many people in cities, they won't vote in their city election. And I know you know this. They won't vote on the local level. But then when it's a presidential level, you look at the voting numbers. Don't take my word for it. Just go pull the voting data in your district for a presidential election, and then go pull that same data for a city council election. Now that is unacceptable to me. Why can't we make voter training all year round? Why do we start pushing all these voters to learn? Well, even with some people got 2 PhDs and they came out of the voting booth with a headache, didn't understand what they were voting on. So, and academic education is not necessarily the same as voter education. I think the voter education have to start on the local level, and I think it has to continue year round. And I think once we understand and recognize how laws are made and enacted, I think we'll have a better hold on how we decrease voter suppression.
Very good points indeed, Diane. Karthik, let's go to the realities, of the current situation with COVID-19. So with the activities that you see, especially with the social distancing that needs to happen and all that, and of course the November 3rd, it's coming. Do you have hope that the polling stations or whoever needs to take care of the safety of the citizens who are coming out, can they come out with confidence to vote? Do you see hope there that things have been done enough to keep people safe?
Yeah, I mean, see, right now, Georgia was dirty. Governor Kemp, Brian Kemp opened Georgia, and he said just wear the mask, wash your hand, keep social distancing, and moving forward. And this is not only government job; this is our job. We need to take care of ourselves. I mean, we cannot depend on president or governor. We need to watch ourselves. I see a lot of young people, they don't wear masks in the shopping centers, like in Walmart, like Cloud Republic. Some they say wear the mask, but the people say no, we can't wear the mask, and you can't do anything for that. People do the hurt, people touch the stuffs. I mean, we can't control that thing. People have to be more smart. And I went to for the war, and the cop county did a really good job for social distancing and everything for
Okay.
the voting booth.
So from what you've seen, you're saying probably there's a fair and good representation for people to go vote in that's taking place either in the early voting or that will happen on November 3rd. Actually, today was the
Yes.
last day. Leo, please
Yeah, today
correct.
is the last day. It's over now. It's over.
Yes, for the
So
early
now
voting.
people
Yes.
vote
Today is the
November
last
3rd.
day
And
for early voting, and now the only day they
yes.
can vote is November 3rd, unless Leo tells me otherwise that because of the storm, some of the other locations are opening up on Saturday. Yes or no, Leo?
I,
Currently, there's one location opening up down south,
Okay.
and seeing that, and there's still some precincts that are still without power, and we worked really hard on that, and I think we've got pretty much all of them up except for one.
Okay, sounds good. So thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Leo. In fact, and let's continue to get that message out for November 3rd. And it just gives me a kick for going and voting on the D-Day. So it's good early voting, but somehow it's just me, my personal thing to
I
go
did on
vote.
my Saturday.
Okay.
I did on my Saturday. Because see, I represent, I have to do first so people can do.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, Karthik. Keep it going. So, Patty, let's go. And I know we have a few more minutes, or probably 15 to 20 more minutes. But Patty, I wanted to discuss definitely about the mail-in ballots that's been happening because everybody's been talking about it. Tell us a little bit more. Maybe it's too late. I think we've surpassed the stage of where people can order mail-in ballots, but suppose they do have it right now, what is the next step they should be doing before November 3rd? And if you can talk about some of the difficulties that people have faced, you and along with others who might have faced these issues.
Well, it's due on Tuesday by 7 p.m.
Okay.
And it's Friday. I have to find out in North Carolina.
And that's
whether-
in Georgia. And if
Yes.
I'm not wrong, things which I don't know, there's lawsuits going on, so back and forth, and when it can be received and how
7,
late.
7 p.m. in Georgia. And so I received it today, and it was supposed to be, it was allegedly sent in the mail a couple of weeks ago. At least I got a text and I spoke with them. Where is it? It takes 4 or 5 days. Why is it so late? And I thought I wouldn't be voting unless I fly in that day, which I just cannot do right now here at Duke. So, so I was surprised to see this finally appear in the mail today. And I can't tell you how excited I am. Last presidential election, there was voter apathy. People thought, one person was a shoo-in. And just as a background, my family came when I was 12 to the U.S. And my dad's a physics professor at Notre Dame. And by the time he decided he's going to stay in the country, and we had a green card. The only difference, you had every right except voting rights. And then it took so long to become a citizen because by the time I got hired by CNN International, they were processing the Olympic Games, and it got late, and we had to do fingerprinting again. And so I was 30 years old. And then I didn't vote because as a television news anchor interviewing some of the, newsmakers, policymakers, candidates, I did not want to appear biased in my interviews. Most journalists won't tell you how they vote. I just didn't vote. And when I did, it was in Dallas. I screamed out, "I'm an American!" And everybody was applauding and laughing because they just were quite amazed. Take it back that somebody's so excited to be able to vote. And it was Obama, actually, that year. And I'm not aligned to one party. So I'm going to try to, the only choice is FedExing it. And so they will get it by Tuesday, 7 p.m. And I have to find out whether, I can overnight it tomorrow, Monday. It could potentially be late. So, and the other thing is, having been a news anchor and reporter for many, many years, people just think just because it's written must be the truth. You have to, when I was hired by CNN International and worked as a journalist in Atlanta for 10 years, and there wasn't much competition, and there wasn't social media. So I'm a traditional journalist. There were so many layers of, people checking your copy. And we took probably 3 other competing news organizations and fact-checked what we were putting out there. Now, anybody can produce anything and put it out there. I actually see something and I'll look to see what's the agenda behind it. Are there 2 or 3 other agencies, whether it's national, international, ethnic, that's reporting the same thing? And just don't believe everything that's written. And social media is a concern. I mean, that's where news is breaking right now. I mean, on Twitter. And then, CNN has changed. News outlets are competing for, the audience and their market share, and their headlines are leading people a certain way. And media is definitely, it's very biased, and it's perturbing.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get it out there tomorrow and claim I'm American.
Okay,
This
sounds
is the best country in the world, and you have to live in other countries. This is the reason people come to make their American dreams come true, and you have to be part of this process.
Definitely.
make every effort to get there on Tuesday, and if you haven't voted already, to make your vote count.
Definitely good message out there, Patty. So, Rizwan, let us know, is it better to vote by mail or in person? It might be too late to vote by mail now, but what are your general thoughts?
Yes, you're right. The time is running out for voting by mail, but my experience, I voted in person, and I can tell you from my experience that the voting locations are very well prepared to keep you safe. They maintain social distance. They have sanitizers all over the place. They require you to wear a face mask as you come in to vote, at least in the precinct that I voted. So I felt very comfortable going in and voting myself in person, and then had the confidence that my vote will be counted because it's there. I have voted already. So I would encourage people, even on November 3rd, that perhaps the lines will be longer only because of the social distancing, and the lines may be longer. But I think as citizens of the country, we owe it to ourselves and owe it to the country to be there to vote. And I would guess or venture to guess that the voting locations will be prepared to make sure that you are safe and maintain order and maintain social distance. Even when you're outside in line, wear a mask. If somebody else doesn't, it's their issue, but you should wear a mask. But do not miss the opportunity to vote because you think it would be unsafe. I believe that it will be safe, and we should absolutely make the effort to vote if we haven't already.
Also, I want
Definitely.
to add that, I lived in Midtown on the park, and I moved to West Midtown, and I ended up going to the wrong precinct, taking the Uber took me there, and it was such a frustrating process. And then I had to get to the other, and it was just in general 3 miles apart, but I went to the wrong place. And just to make sure that you're going to the right precinct to vote.
Exactly, definitely. Leo, I definitely want to. So, Leo, did you want to chime in? Because I have a question for you
Yeah, and
next.
if you do end up at the wrong precinct and you think that you're at the right one and they think you're at the wrong one, cast a provisional ballot and figure it out there. Don't leave a precinct without voting if you're certain, and if you are contesting.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me.
Properly.
Yeah, I had to go. I made it, but I had to go. It was the mayoral race, I think. I had to go to, yeah, to go to.
Okay. Sounds good. So, Leo, I definitely want to spend a few minutes about the electoral college system of voting, or our political system, because I think most Americans, as we think that we are going to vote and choose the president, but it's not directly so. So, can you tell us some insight into the 538 electoral college that exists, and how does that play in, even in, it could play into this election? And you say, oh my gosh, but this candidate got 3 million more votes, and how come that guy, or that, whoever won?
Yes, the American system, it does not determine its presidency by the popular vote. The majority of the vote getter wins. That system occasionally works out such that the person who got the majority of votes also got the most weighted electoral college votes. So the electoral college is a way of weighting votes such that we don't get a misrepresentation, overrepresentation of ideology, idea, or special localized interests that a state with more populace would have over states with very small populace. It's very important, for instance, that a state like North Dakota, South Dakota, those states have strong representation. And consider right now that our natural gas production and fracking is coming from those states. What if they had such little representation in Congress that their needs and their opportunities and how they could bless us as a whole nation were not being supported by an ongoing development of their infrastructure? And that's what would happen if we only based the voting system on popular vote, because politicians would focus all their attention on the heavy population areas, New York, California, and they would be overrepresented. and the resources and the attention that we give to them, while we leave out smaller voices. The Asian Pacific Islander Asian American community in Georgia alone has grown from, in just my time from doing political work in Georgia from 2012, from 2.9% to 4.2% in the last time I checked. So that voice is a strong voice. And then if you're certain areas like Gwinnett, et cetera, that voice is a very powerful and very important vote. I wouldn't want their voice not to be paid attention to because their populist numbers were not great enough. So it is a challenge for us. It does create a challenge because it decreases the confidence. We have a basic understanding in one of the universal concepts in American democracy is majority rules. And so people keep hearing that in schools, which is not true, right? so we keep hearing that in schools, and then we get really upset and we think, wait a minute, majority didn't rule.
It's a representative democracy. And Leo, my claim to fame, CNN headline news was announcing Al Gore won the presidency. And then that's when everybody's like, oh, we didn't know Pratibha was on television. Everybody's watching, my parents' friends, and oh yeah, she's been there 3 or 4 years. But then spending a month correcting, that error that I was told in my ear to announce. But so it's not a true democracy like it is in India. It's a representative democracy.
And Nazeera, not to be too technical, but to the point that Leo was making, there are certain states where the majority gets the entire delegation.
True.
And there are other states that the delegates are proportioned between the two parties based on how many votes were cast. So the example of Gwinnett County, unfortunately in Georgia, that's not the case. It's all or none in Georgia. So Gwinnett County's voice is not going to count because unless they happen to change the majority in Georgia, which is going to be a close election this year, they might be able to. But until they do, their vote makes a difference in the county and in the Georgia House and Senate, but perhaps not so much in the U.S. And also, there's an argument going on right now, which I think there's a couple of cases being discussed at the Supreme Court level, and the ruling was that the delegates are not required to vote based on the numbers of votes in that particular state. So Georgia may actually elect, let's say, one party or the other, but the delegates can go there and change their mind and say, no, I'm going to vote for the other party. So that flexibility is allowed. Good or bad, I don't know, but that flexibility at this point is still allowed. So a lot of complexity in exactly how things work out in the long run.
Sure. So Leo, that would really frustrate me, right? I mean, and we saw that happen recently in a couple of years ago or so. So is that reducing? I mean, is that done on purpose? I mean, so I know we need there are 538 electors, but tell me, how many does a candidate need to win? Because we are taught majority wins, and then you finally come and say, no, it's just these group of people are delegates, and then why should I go vote?
So the winner takes all states become very important, as Rizwan is saying. And so Florida is a winner take all state. Georgia is a winner take all state. There's several others. And that's why you see that focus. The magic number is 270. So
270.
270 wins the election. And all the forecasting you're seeing right now, and the reason why you see President Trump making his third visit to Georgia in less than 30 days, that's quite unusual. And that tells you from that's the big problem. And so he's really struggling and he knows it's going to be a struggle to win Georgia, and that's extremely important. So that 270 number is the magic number. And whereas last time Trump was tracking, believe it or not, and no one believed that he was necessarily going to win, but the trending was towards him winning that way. And this time we don't see that trending.
Okay, I know Fred, you wanted to add something.
Yes. On that subject, I mean, I think Rizwan brought up a great point, and I had the similar thoughts as well. But there's, you started the question by asking, is it an electoral system right? And I think Leo gave a great answer. I think it is meant in the best of intentions by our founding fathers, right? And it's still true today. Otherwise, politicians will spend millions of dollars in high-density areas and completely ignore the Midwest, right? And so when you ask about is a system is good, a system is good, again, with all the nuances. A problem maybe that I see that we could probably work on is gerrymandering. I think they've taken the idea of electoral votes, and a few politicians, I'm not particularly blaming any one party, but well, one party more than other, has completely, used that to put their thumb on the scale. And that's obvious. The facts are out there. We don't have time to go into those, right? But gerrymandering to me is one of the biggest threats for democracy. It does not allow for true representation. If you go see some of the numbers that came out of 2016, 2018, there are entire districts where one party got 75% of the vote, but did not get any of the electoral seats over there. I mean, it's mind-boggling to go in there. And the second problem is what Rizwan brought up, right, which is about the electoral system itself. So I think he covered that, but for me, gerrymandering is just one of the biggest problems.
Okay.
Nazeera, can I,
Yes.
just quickly add to something that we're all talking about a lot here is our analysis of some of the weaknesses in our system, some of the things that are out of balance. And I think that the COVID pandemic sort of exposed some of those weaknesses. Of course, the divisiveness, the introduction of the power of social media has exposed that. And so I think those things are forcing the innovations, is forcing the local conversations that takes the issues away from federal government, so far away from us, why care about those things, and making things, even like Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, how we argue about the Voting Rights Act has been destroyed and that we've lost the federal protections in the Voting Rights Act. But the fact is that most people didn't even know what they were. And that's why a place like Lowell, Massachusetts was having, racial discrimination at their polls. But the formula was designed in such a way that was so federalized that local communities didn't really know how do we change the formula? How do we act on this ourselves? And so, yes, locally now we need to come up with these innovations. It's being forced by COVID, the pandemic. We need to adopt these innovations. I've seen from Secretary of State Brian Raffensperger a willingness. I got new machines in my office right now to start to look at the adoption of more innovation, to create localized commissions and task force to talk about that. But it's important that we take those innovation conversations away from the politicians, that we take it away from them and we localize and we create independent groups, whether they're think tanks or PACs, whatever, academics coming together to form best practices in voting, to talk about what Maine is doing with ranked choice voting, what Seattle, Washington is doing with the technology voting, we're using your app. We need to now take that stuff away from politicians, because politicians are naturally going to use the elections process to their advantage to win and for their party to have advantage. We, as the citizens, have to become the leaders on these issues, and the local way is the best way to do that.
So sure, very, very well said, Leo. And when you talk about innovation, I cannot put the technology innovation somewhere out. So Fred, my next question to you is, do you think we are using enough of digital technology, or have we failed the digital technology space in the political system because we then keep hearing about the Russians have hacked the votes? So how much of that should we be working on to improve that system?
I think we kind of sort of talked about it earlier when we were talking about social media, because I think the same argument applies over here, right? So technology is good. The use of technology has to be careful, right? For example, let's go back to the social media example, and I'll come to your Russian vote hacking. But there are AI bots right now being built by Facebook and Twitter that is able to very quickly determine if something is factually accurate or not, right? And so you can flag them if they are dangerous, if they lead to certain kinds of destruction, you can flag them and remove them. You really don't need a human intervention to do it. So it goes back to the good old days when news medias, and somebody, I think Patty mentioned, right, back in the day when they would double, triple check all the data sources. In fact, most reputable organizations would have some sort of like a two-source system, right, a two-source verification before they can publicly publish anything. We've come so far away from that system. So technology can kind of help you in validating those kinds of things, and even go to the other side, flagging people who misuse it, right? Not just the Twitter in chief, but everybody else that uses or abuses that system, and that they should, because in our society, if you had a group of friends and there was one person who just literally always just falsified everything, he or she would have that reputation of being the con man, right? And we've lost that in some sort of a social group, but in terms of other technologies, I think technology is safe. Somebody else mentioned earlier that if I can do all these complex things. I mean, I don't know if you guys have realized, but you can buy a car at the click of a button, and a vending machine will give it to you, right? If we can do that and do complex operations, why not simplify that process? And I think the technology is there. The implementation of it is, we have to be careful. I think the Russia hacking and of late, even the news we read about Iran getting involved, it sounds dangerous, but have trust in the system. Nothing bad really happened. The fact that they're trying is the bad news, but the systems, there's not been a single case of a voting machine actually being hacked and a vote being changed, at least not that I know of, right? But what they're trying to do is try the next best thing, intimidation, using technology to get personal information and say, we know where you live, and if you don't do what we say, we're going to actually publish some information. Now that is dangerous, but that's where technology can easily, flag something as spam, give people the access to tools to say, is this really valid? Most of us who work in corporate, we go through this training for phishing and stuff, right? How we're supposed to treat certain emails because corporations' data is at stake. Why we don't apply it in our personal life, I think it baffles me, but it's also a personal choice.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you
if
so
I
much.
may,
Go ahead, Diane.
yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt him.
No, you go ahead.
But I just want to add to that point because I think that's an outstanding point. Just this week, the United States signed a digital transformation agreement with Estonia. And I just wanted everybody to know that we're already behind. You got countries like Switzerland and Norway, and I could name many, many others where they have already rapidly entered into the digital realm. We're just behind already. And so I think the digital platforms are here to stay. And I think whether we like them or not, we're going to have to adjust and adapt. And I think many aspects of our lives are going to immediately, convert to some type of digital concept. COVID, overnight, we switched to this platform that we're using now, where 90% of my meetings now are on the digital platform. So I say that to say that the United States have already taken a giant step to integrate digital platforms into every aspect of our lives. And the agreement is signed. So we already know where we're going. We just need to be aware of it and start preparing for it.
Definitely, Diane. And you just brought music to my ears. I'm a small business owner, and a team meeting today, all we talked about was how do we digitalize further, and how do we go digital. So definitely, I think we're all heading that path for sure. So Dan, let's go with the 30 seconds closing comments from each of you, starting with Dan.
First of all, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the individuals who participated in what I think was a productive, informative conversation. And I'm sure that viewers have learned a lot tonight. I know I've learned from all of this talent and knowledge tonight. And I just want to encourage everyone. As you said, today was the last day to early vote. I think most people have voted. I think everybody's fighting for, a small percentage of undecided voters and people who love the voting on election day. I think that you have to be the change that you want to see and stop waiting on someone else to do it or to be it for you. And so I just want to close with encouraging everyone out there, no matter what your age is, no matter what your challenges are, make a difference in your local community first. And once you do that, you're able to then make a difference on a higher level. So if you haven't voted, I want to encourage everyone to vote. And I want to encourage those who want to run for office, go ahead, run for office. I think all of us on this platform would love to support great individuals who believe in moving the community forward with transparency, accountability, and lastly, integrity. And thanks again, everyone. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Diane, much for your precious time with us. Karthik, closing comments, please.
Yes, thank you for you did this arrange this meeting, and thank you for everyone. And also, I have like 50 people to register the vote this year.
Wow.
in Cobb County is Indian families.
Very
And
nice.
they don't have only president, but they don't know who is the chairman. They don't know who is the district attorney, who is the sheriff. They don't know anything. So I just have them make sure that what and what they do for the community. So
Very nice.
I have 50 people. There was my goal to make the registered award.
Very nice. In fact, people don't know that they have to register to vote, which I learned a long time ago. That was one
Yeah,
of the important message that we had to give. Karthik, thank you for all you do, being out there in the community and educating and
yeah,
advocating. I can tell you that all of you right now, if you're not in social media and you all would meet for chai and chit chat, but I'm sure you will see differences of opinions if you are in social media among ourselves itself. But respecting and agreeing to disagree is also a very good policy that we can take forward to unite more people. So thank you, Karthik.
yeah.
Simran, your 30 seconds comments, please. Closing comments.
So I would just like to direct this to people my age to put them together. So essentially is don't let anybody take your vote away from you. This is the only time you get to speak. This is the only time you get to really make a change in your community. Ask what you want from the government governing you. So get out, vote, keep this momentum up. Um, Vote policy, not party. That's incredibly important. Make sure you do your research. Do not just listen to other people, what their thoughts is, and vote on the basis of what they want, but make sure that you vote on the basis of you want and you keep to it. You stick to it and you keep going even after these elections.
Very well said. Thank you, Simran. Fred?
Well, thank you, Nazeera, for setting up this platform and inviting me. I think this is very educational to everyone. So we talked a lot about voting, and I think again, it's not about who you vote for, but just getting out there and voting. I just want to remind people the last 4 elections, the average U.S. population voted was about between 54 to 55%. In the 2019 elections, India voted 66%, and that's from a billion plus people, right? We can do better, and I think having conversations with our neighbors, with our social circles. I think a lot of people, including myself, we've gotten to a point of maybe saying, I'm just being too polite. I don't want to discuss politics. Sure, don't discuss politics in a derogatory way, but saying something like, guys, have you voted? That is not discussing politics. That's exercising your citizenship rights, right? So we should be a little bit more comfortable in the fact that we get people to encourage to vote. Put on that I voted sticker proudly, make sure others see it. That's the only time I flaunt myself on social media, but I think that's the message that all of us have to take back home.
Very well said. Thank you, Fred. Rizwan?
So I agree with what Fred said. I think voting is really important, but it's also a responsibility. Responsibility in the sense that it's not just voting. You've got to understand what you're voting for and the difference that you will make for this country, the country we all love and appreciate, what that difference will be for the future of this country. So take a little time and understand the political differences on both sides, what the future would look like, whether it's person A or person B that you vote for. So I think it should be taken with a little more responsibility beyond just casting a ballot based on a single issue or a single impression. I just leave with us with one quote. And by the way, first of all, Nazeera, thank you for doing this. It's been a great conversation. And as Karthik said, I'd love to connect with most of you, all of you, separately to further discuss what the thinking is. But Stephen Breyer, who is our Justice of the Supreme Court, he was having a conversation with a businessman, and the businessman said to Justice Breyer that, "Hey, I'm a business person. I have no real concern or connection with politics." And to that, Justice Breyer responded. He says, "As an American in a democracy, not if you do not engage in politics, then frankly, you have no business here." Now, Justice Stephen Breyer is a pretty polite, nice guy. For him to make such a harsh statement was necessary to inform people that, hey, you're responsible for what happens in this country, and you should take the responsibility seriously.
Very
So
well
thank
said. Thank you. Thank you for that note as well, Rizwan. Patty?
I've already drummed in the importance of voting from my personal experience. So I'm looking for somebody to drop my ballot off over there so it doesn't get lost when I FedEx it tomorrow. But policies matter, as South Asian Americans. Um, immigration is a concern. U.S.-India relations is a concern, and along with all the other things that might, whether it's climate, whether it's healthcare. But read up, understand, and vote for the policies, not for the person who's been trained to perform so well in front of the camera, or and just get out there and vote if you haven't already.
Awesome. Thank you, Patty. Shri?
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. I just want to say, your vote is your voice, so make sure you do exercise your right to vote. And there are people that have language barriers, and some of the states do have poll workers that can provide language assistance. And make sure you are aware of that by, going to your election commission office to see if they do have language assistance. And, policies are important, and educate yourself on what the issues are and be an informed voter, and make sure you are actively engaged and participate in the political process of this country. Thank you.
Definitely, Shri. Thank you. Leo?
Nazeera, I forgot to thank you.
Oh, no, that's fine. Leo, go ahead. We can hear you. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Here I am. Yes, thank you, Nazeera, for putting this together. Thanks all of you for the work that you're doing in your communities to make civic engagement more accessible, more localized, and more accountable to your local communities. And I think about the theme. I think you said something about step up, and that's what everyone has to do. Democracy is on the line, and we are making an incredible, poignant statement about our excitement about the opportunity to really make our voices heard. Make sure that everybody steps up and goes out to vote. Have a plan. If you need help with your plan, go to securevotegeorgia.com, securevotegA.com, which is the Secretary of State site that we've set up. Make sure that you step forward. And when you get to that line, make sure you stay in it. Hold yourself in that line. There's a great site, holdtheline.com, which will help you with tools and ideas on how to stay in that line. Make sure that you get there. And then once you've done your vote, make sure that you go to the great site again that we've created as a portal here, ballottrax.net. That's TRAX.net. So that when you've mailed your ballot, when you cast your ballot, you can go and track the processing of your ballot and know that you've been counted in this election. So you've got all these great tools, but the best tool is yourself and your ability to talk to everyone else and the ideas that you have on how to make things better. And I want to say, let's always step. Let's step always. So not just on 11/3, but we know that for us to take America back into the hands of the citizens, we have to step beyond 11/3, and we have to step on 11/4 to make America better and more engaged for all of us.
Definitely, very well said, Leo. I want to thank all of you for taking the time this evening. I know we had scheduled it yesterday, but we are here, and there was so much information that was given out. Hopefully, the attendees have learned, and we'll be this recorded session, which will be out on social media as well. And November 3rd, the first thing I'm heading is to the polling station. I just told you, it just gives me a kick to vote on the day off. So I encourage all of you, as did the other panelists, just make it happen on November 3rd for this time, and then we'll get back to the drawing table on November 4th. But our Chai and Just Chat sessions are community dialogues every month. This is our 4th year. Check out our website. We have our session coming up in November, and communicate with us, continue the dialogue, continue the positivity, continue the unity and the peace. And thank you again, all of you, so much for taking the time to listen. And panelists, a special thank you to all of you. Have a good night.